Let's get in positions, everyone. Camera 1 into a 2-second pre-roll. Camera 1, track left. Open lock. Watch your focus, Challenge. We're on the air.
Kids wanna know. Kids wanna know. Kids wanna know.
Did you hear that? Sounded like a train. They're pretty cool. They're fun to watch. And once in a while, if you go like that, you can get the engineer to blow his whistle. But 100 years ago, they were used for something much more important. If you don't know why, check this story out.
It may have looked like a giant mechanical monster to early settlers of the Old West, but it was anything but destructive. In fact, it may have been the single most useful tool in building the United States. The train. To find out more about these modern wonders, we went to the one place we know we can get the facts.
California State Railroad Museum is the largest interpretive railroad museum in North America, and it's the most visited in the world.
But I wondered what made this museum so different from other ones.
At this railroad museum, we put the cars and locomotives in a setting that they would have appeared in when they were being used. For instance, when you first come into tour in the Sierra scene, you see the Governor Stanford locomotive heading for a giant snow shed, while railroad workers are working on the side of a mountain, laying more track and tunneling through. So you see what it would have looked like. The railroad really began here in Sacramento. It molded the West. You look at how westward expansion happened, and it happened around where railroads went. Railroads were very much a part of our lives. It was how we were transported ourselves. It's how we got the goods and services and things that we used came by rail. And I think there's a real mystique to that history and that heritage. It's very romantic. Trains there's something magic about them. There truly is something magic about a train.
But it wasn't magic that helped move things from state to state.
Anything you've touched or been around is at one time brought in by a train in the days past. And Railroad Museum is probably the only place you can see and touch and feel and get an experience with the steam train anymore.
With a little help from my friend Richie, we'll take a tour of the museum to give you a taste of history in the Old West and how trains shaped the country. His dad works here, so he might know a thing or two also, like who helped build the tracks for the trains.
So what they did is brought Chinese and Irish immigrants over to lay down the track. And actually that helped integrate the Chinese Americans and the Irish Americans into America. Because they were hard workers and they brought them over and did a lot of the work with those types of crews. With the Chinese Americans, when they set off the explosives going through the Sierras, they had to blast through mountains. Rather than going around them, they blasted through. So they would go and set off charges, and they couldn't get out of the caves fast enough before the charges would let go. So there was a real turnover rate in the workers in the Chinese Americans.
Many lives were lost to help these trains rumble down the tracks, like this one, the Governor Stanford locomotive, the very first one to hit the rails. And since there were no tracks, it had to be brought to San Francisco by boat. Many of the old trains were very unique.
Back in those days, they put a lot of pride in them. They would have all the chrome and all the brass polished, and nowadays it takes so much time to do that. That kind of signature on your work isn't done anymore. The modern trains, first of all, they're more powerful, they're more efficient, more streamlined, aerodynamic. Where the older trains, they were made, what made them run was steam from coal and from wood and so on. It took a lot more work, where now everything's on computer, everything is, like I said, streamlined. So it's more efficient.
Like this big steel black monster.
Actually it is. That's one of its nicknames, is a monster, but it's a Southern Pacific locomotive, and it's weighs about 1 million pounds. And it's a cab forward, as compared to most engines have the cab in the rear. And the reason they did that is when they went through the tunnels, all the smoke and soot would come to the rear and basically choke out the engineers. So they designed it with a cab in the front, so all the smoke would be behind the engineers.
And Richie has an idea why engineers, as well as people like you and me, are fascinated with trains.
They like to ride on them and sometimes drive them on the tracks.
There are all kinds. Some carry mail, some carry cattle, some carry food. But the most popular one probably carries people.
We're in a coach built and put into service in 1929 up till 1968. During the daytime, your upper berth is here, and in the evening, your porter would crank this down, making up a upper berth. These cushions here would come together, the backs go down, making up the lower berth.
Whether you're young or not as young, something about trains can bring out emotion, memories, something from inside.
When they ring the bell.
When you look at the size, the impressive nature of a train and what it does, the noise that it makes, the look and the feel of it as it goes by, it stirs something inside of us. No matter how old we are, whether we're 70, someone's 70 and they worked on the train or the railroad themselves, or they're 7 and they've heard the stories from their grandparents, or they've seen it in the movies. I think that that's what kind of stirs inside all of us, that romantic image.
An image that can still be seen. All you have to do is look and let your imagination go.
Don't move. Kids Want to Know. We'll be right back.
Yo, listen up. We're back with Kids Want to Know.
Thanks for joining us on Kids Want to Know. You know, I'm always looking for good stories. Help me out. If you've got a good story for Kids Want to Know, I'm anxious to find out what it is. You can send your questions to Kids Want to Know, P.O. Box 40, Sacramento, California, 95812-0040. And if we use your question, we'll send you a cool t-shirt. Hey, we might even use you on the show, too. For Kids Want to Know, I'm Chris Eddy. We'll see you next time. I got to see if I can get my cable in a little bit better. To the left, a little to the left. Okay, just a second. Right? Okay, right. Pretty good now? Oh, I gotta stay right here. Okay. Hand up. Alrighty.